By now, we've all heard about The Idol. If you haven't, it's a Sam Levinson-directed show starring The Weeknd, Lily Rose Depp, and Jennie from Blackpink. You've probably also heard about the endless controversy surrounding it, and its director. If Sam Levinson sounds familiar, that's because he directed Euphoria. Now, I watched both seasons of Euphoria, and for the most part, I stayed out of the discourse surrounding it, because it seemed exhausting on both sides. But since seeing The Idol, I think it's made one thing very clear. Sam Levinson was never self-aware. He's not in on the joke. The first season of Euphoria makes it seem like he is because it's very good at walking the line between realistic and artistic, and the writing and acting hold up enough to make you forget most of the things that don't quite gel. The second season, however, is absolute chaos. It's so bad, it becomes camp. And not in the looking camp right in the eye Met Gala way. Actual camp. I laughed so hard through so many very serious moments of that show, and I don't think I was meant to. Throughout the first season, the main controversy surrounding it was that it portrayed lots of sex and drug use by teenagers, but as somebody who grew up at the height of Skin's popularity, that wasn't a debate I was willing to enter again. I can see both sides of the argument. On the one hand, if you cast actual children and have them act those actions, it could be perceived as exploitation, whereas if you cast adults, this is less of a problem, but it does normalize it more to the audience because watching adults engage in sexual behavior is less uncomfortable. On the other hand, teenagers are doing things like this, so to ignore every story that features these actions because it's inappropriate would be dishonest. Personally, however, it's not really my thing. I watched the first season of Euphoria because my younger sister was obsessed with it, and I didn't really understand the hype, but I did think it told a cohesive story, particularly when it came to Rue. And fun fact, did you know that it's actually a remake of an Israeli series from 2013? I only discovered that when I was doing some research for this video, and I just thought it was interesting. The second season, however, focuses on too many characters, muddies the messages of the first season because it's so obsessed with having water cooler of the week moments, and genuinely has some of the worst writing and dialogue I've seen in recent years. But people all rushed to defend it as satire or a deliberate obfuscation of the first season to subvert audience expectations or whatever. But now that The Idol is out, we can all see that that's not true, right? I feel like for Levinson fans, this moment is a lot like the Season 8 Game of Thrones moment. Oh, these people aren't actually geniuses. They were held up mainly by prior source material and a good cast and crew, and without at least one of those things, the legs completely fall out of the project.
Well, Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet.
Now, I've only watched the first episode as of writing this, and honestly, I don't intend to watch any more unless I absolutely have to. Like, for example, if suddenly in the finale they have a total turnaround and reveal that they know the entire worldview the show is portraying is utterly ridiculous, but I highly doubt it. And also, even if it does do that, that doesn't retroactively make the things they portrayed less gross and sexist. Making a sexist joke without context and then going, "No, I knew what I was doing, therefore it is satire," is not the same thing as actual satire. Let me explain. The first episode introduces us to Jocelyn, and after showing us 2 full minutes of just her face doing different modelling poses, shows us an intimacy coordinator tried to tell her that she can't get naked for a shoot because it's not in her nudity writer, and then frames this as him being somehow in the wrong because Jocelyn really wants to, you guys! Credit where credit is due, the rest of her team, the ones who are trying to exploit her physically while also freaking out about a leaked photo of her online because they can't control it, are also portrayed to be terrible. Or at least, I hope we're supposed to perceive them that way.
You want to get in closer? Oh my. Who did that?
I don't know.
That was a selfie? She took a picture? That was...
Yeah, you can tell by the angle.
I mean, it's like a...
They're all snide, underhanded, and hiding what's really going on from Jocelyn, while they try to handle it as well as the photo shoot, which culminates in one of them locking the intimacy coordinator in a bathroom so she can just do the nude photos, which is... a choice? Like, who am I supposed to root for here? Because so far, I'm rooting for Dan Levy to make better project choices. You can do better than this, King. In fact, most of the actors in the opening scene that goes for half the runtime of the episode, by the way, are doing a pretty good job. And the cinematography is pretty enough that you get lulled into a false sense of security that this might be another season 1 of Euphoria, but then... yeah... Abel, quick question. What the fuck are you doing? Acting is hard. I was a theatre kid. I almost pursued acting, so I know firsthand how hard it is. But I also know, as a viewer of television, how hard it can be to watch bad acting. And oh my god. I think he's going for creepy. I think that's an intentional choice. But even within that choice, there are things about it that just fall completely flat. I'm not watching a creepy guy, I'm watching Abel Tesfaye be creepy. And that's an important distinction. On top of the fact that the show makes it explicitly clear more than once that Jocelyn likes him that way. If a man approached me like this, I would run in the opposite direction. If I saw this man in the club, I would steer clear. If this man attempted to hit on me with his absolute negative riz, I would laugh in his face and then be afraid that he was going to attack me for it. But Jocelyn just says,
He's so rapey.
Yeah, I kind of like that about him.
I am aware, as somebody who has been in fandom spaces since childhood, that these women exist. Women who are attracted to rape fantasy, who like reading and writing graphic violent stories to get off to. Women who lash out when you tell them it makes you uncomfortable because just because I write about it doesn't mean I support actual rapists. I understand those women. It's about having the power over those things. I don't like engaging with that content, but I would never try to stop them from creating it. I just make my personal opinions on it clear and then step away. The difference between those women and Jocelyn is that Jocelyn was written by two men. Two men writing a woman who likes being exploited, who enjoys how rapey this man is, who take every excuse to get this girl's top off and then make it a character trait that she wants to do it more. That is creepy. And not in an intentional way. Because I think they genuinely do believe they're doing the right thing. I think that they think that they're geniuses who are telling a story about exploitation the right way, and it has never occurred to them that just because they're also saying exploitation is bad, that doesn't make what they're doing any less exploitative. Like, for example, the photo that was leaked of her is being hyped up in the first half of the episode, but they never show it. So we as an audience have a lot of time to build it up in our heads. It could be the worst photo we've ever seen. It could be horrendous. And that makes the whole thing feel worse, because Jocelyn doesn't know it's happening yet, and this image is getting spread and spread and spread, so you're waiting for the moment she finds out. And then she does, and they show you the photo, and it's fine? Like, it's not good. It definitely shouldn't have been leaked because revenge porn is a disgusting crime, but within the context of the things the show is willing to show us, it's not that bad. And you can see why that might be a problem, right? Showing the image makes the impact of it less impressive. And not only that, but it starts to desensitize the audience, not only to nudity, which we've already seen far too much of, but to sex crimes. And speaking of this show's use of nudity and sexuality, I want to talk about... Raquel S. Benedict wrote an article in 2021 titled "Everyone is Beautiful and No One is Horny" that I highly suggest everybody reads, which is mainly about the lack of sex appeal in modern cinema compared to old. Even when everybody on screen is peak physical condition, nobody is horny. Nobody is thirsty for each other. Now, we don't need sex scenes to see that, but we also don't really get any either. She says, "The same fate has befallen our bodies. A body is no longer a holistic system. It is not the vehicle through which we experience joy and pleasure during our brief time in the land of the living. It is not a home to live in and be happy. It, too, is a collection of features, six-pack, thigh gap, cum gutters. And these features exist not to make our lives more comfortable, but to increase the value of our assets. Our bodies are investments which must always be optimized to bring us what exactly? Some vague sense of a better living? Is a life without bread objectively better than a life with it? When we were children, did we dream of counting every calorie and logging every step? Everybody in The Idol is beautiful, and the only character that is horny seems to be Tedros, and he's not even believably portraying it. Over-sexualization is a vehicle for exploitation, the show says so itself, but then it goes out of its way to over-sexualize the lead actress until nothing about her is sexy anymore. Is there anything more cruelly puritanical than enshrining a sexual ideal that leaves a person unable to enjoy sex? The sexual chemistry between Jocelyn and Tedros is, generously, barely there. Ungenerously, it's in the negative digits. Despite how much graphic behavior they partake in together, YouTube algorithm, look at me, I am doing my best, none of it is like hot. It's only hot in the sense that two attractive people are going through the motions. And some of those motions are distasteful at best. If all it takes to get you off is two hot people fucking, congratulations, I'm glad you uncritically enjoyed the first season of Bridgerton. Come for me all you want, those two barely had any chemistry and you know it. You were all just too distracted by Roger to care. And even then, they had more spark than these two. If you're going to show a woman being attracted to a man's creepiness, I think you also need to endear it to the audience somewhat. We will let hot, charismatic men get away with anything as an audience, and if you don't believe me, you have not been on the internet long enough. Have you seen the reception to you? It's horrifying. And a lot of women also find creepy men hot when they're not supposed to. Look at every character Paul Dano has ever played, sorry. But Tedros is like the worst of both worlds. He's not charismatic enough for this behavior to be sexy, and he's not intentionally unsettling enough for it to be weirdly sexy. It's just an uncanny valley in the middle where I hate it and sort of want to push his face away all the time. He treats Jocelyn like an object in the same way that the show does. Like he thinks he's not.
Hello, Angel.
You call the girl's angel?
Just you.
He hits on her badly and still somehow wins her over, and the first episode ends with him asking, "Do you trust me?" She says, "No!" And then he covers her head with her robe, ties it around her neck, and cuts a hole for her mouth before saying,
Oh, you can say.
and that's how the episode ends. I am happy to see kink on screen, even kinks I don't understand, but good God! Disregarding the fact that this man did not ask for consent, or the fact that he had a knife on him and chose to bring it out after he covered her face, that's one of the worst endings to an episode of television that I have ever seen, and I watched the finale of The 100. The pacing was bad, the sound editing was dreadful, the writing was horrific, and the two lead actors are the worst performers in the show. Genuinely, all of the side characters they introduced in the first half of the episode were more interesting to me, and half of them had no personality beyond sassy industry bitch.
No one's having a psychotic. Let's all calm down.
Please, deep breath,
Okay,
okay?
I'm gonna give some information. I need it to be received peacefully, calmly, okay?
You know what they say, there are no small parts, only small actors. This show is trying to prove that to us with every scene. But Tallis, I can hear some people saying, that's the point of this show, he's supposed to be a bad guy. Okay. But is it? Is that the point of this show? His character may turn out to be a villain or not, we won't truly know until the finale, but I genuinely want to know what you think the point this show is trying to make is. Because it reminds me of... I told you I was going to get around to making a video on this eventually. Didn't think it'd be so soon, but here we are. Blonde is a 2022 film directed by Andrew Dominic and starring Ana de Armas as Marilyn Monroe, based on a frankly enormous novel by Joyce Carol Oates. Now, anybody who has seen my previous video knows that her novel Blackwater is one of my favourite books. They will also know that Blackwater and Blonde have two very important things in common. They are fictional non-fiction. Blonde is a retelling of Marilyn Monroe's life in the same way that Blackwater is a retelling of the Chappaquiddick incident. It takes a lot of creative license. The literal first line of the Wikipedia page about the novel refers to it as an extremely fictionalized take on the life of actress Marilyn Monroe. Joyce wasn't trying to be accurate, she was trying to write something interesting, and because she's not claiming to be writing an actual biography, this is easier to swallow. I wrote about the twisting of Marilyn Monroe's image for my dissertation. It was an extended thesis about the way women have their images taken away and twisted after they've died and can't speak up for themselves, and I read Blonde as part of my research. Joyce Carol Oates is known for her particular kind of fictional non-fiction writing, and it really doesn't translate well to screen. Some books just can't be adapted to film without losing the thing that makes them special, just like some films can't be adapted to book form without losing the visual flair that makes them iconic. But even ignoring the book it's based on, this is just a horrible portrayal of an incredibly interesting woman who lived through a lot of really horrific stuff, and yet is mostly only known for her perfect image and difficult personality, done by focusing mainly on her image. This is exactly the kind of thing that I was pointing out in my dissertation as completely missing the point in a way that almost makes the point it's missing even more obvious. Also because in the novel, there's a lot more context given for her actions, particularly in the early years of Norma Jean's life, which stick a lot more accurately to the actual facts of her biography. She was in an orphanage from a young age, fostered out to an abusive home when she was young, and she was married off to a 21-year-old man just after her 16th birthday. The film ignores all of this, cutting straight from her arrival at the orphanage to the beginning of her career, in the stupidest decision the director makes until he has her converse with a talking fetus. Yes, that is a thing that actually happens. No, it was not in the book, at least not like that. But cutting all of that important context makes it very clear that what this movie is trying to do is not to tell a story about an exploited woman, unless they can use her imagery to do it. Because Supporters of this movie will say things like, but do you not think exactly what you said is what this movie is? The way they portray Norma Jean as thinking of Marilyn as perfection in the things that will carry her out of the darkest parts of her life, but which also brings her fame as well. Some sort of twisting together as she wants herself to be an actually good actor, but is betrayed by people who want Marilyn to be, those people thinking Marilyn is her. Is that not what the movie points out by showing an unabashed look at it? Short answer, no. Longer answer, I think there is a way of making this movie that could effectively portray that, but that's not what this movie is doing. You don't need to have drawn out scenes of assault in order to show that her life wasn't perfect, all while focusing on her face. Changing scenes' aspect ratios and colour grading depending on what photo shoot they're in reference to is also a prime example of that surface level thinking. The movie is attempting to say Marilyn Monroe is a facade, Norma Jean was a tortured individual, which is not necessarily incorrect, but it does this by explicitly portraying that image over and over again in a way that goes full circle back to being exploitative of her. It's uncomfortable, and not in the way the book is, trying to force you to think about such things, but in a way that makes it clear that it doesn't understand the problem with this portrayal. It's sexist and dehumanizing and reduces a woman who lived through childhood sexual assault and physical abuse and grew up to become a woman who tried to make a career and a life for herself into a helpless waif with daddy issues. Her supposed throuple never happened. The threesome never happened. And in particular, there are two moments in the film that highlight just how little they actually care about the exploitation of this woman. The first is that there's no proof she ever had an abortion. Yet in the film, she has two, and the camera literally enters her vagina. If you want to know how I feel about scenes like this, watch my old Kingsman 2 review. She then has a conversation with her fetus where it says,
"You won't hurt me this time, will you?"
and implies that it's the same baby she got rid of.
"You're not the same baby. That was me. It's always me."
It's one thing to use a film as your anti-abortion platform, but it's entirely another thing to invent abortions that a real person never had, especially when that real person suffered multiple miscarriages. The idea that Marilyn would have a conversation with her unborn child that is blaming her for killing them, when in real life the only times that we have any proof she lost children were to miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies, is actually evil. Secondly, there are no records of any studio executives raping Monroe, especially that particular one, who she actively got away from in a professional capacity, something that is well known. She famously scrawled trash on a script and sent it back to his office before breaking her contract and leaving for New York, where she started her own production company so that she had more control over her salary and projects. Marilyn Monroe was a victim of a lot of things, yes, but she was also a strong, brave, complicated woman who managed to hold her own against a sea of people trying to drag her down. At least for a while. So there is even less reason to show these things in explicit detail with exploitative nudity and almost laughable CGI. It reduces her image to the one society already thought she was. The ditzy slut with no agency who is a tortured person behind the scenes, and doesn't dig any deeper than that. If anything, it makes her image more surface level because it chooses to focus so image heavy on the things that didn't happen, and in particular on the overly sexual content which Marilyn explicitly didn't want herself reduced to. Marilyn Monroe just wanted to be seen as a person. But this is yet another portrayal of her that goes out of its way to see her as almost entirely just a sex symbol, even as it pretends it's not. I see where these people are coming from when they defend the movie's choices, but the movie doesn't. It doesn't ever look below the surface, actively cuts away from things that are deeper than what they can make look good on camera, like her messy childhood or the actual joy that she experienced acting, despite how fraught her career may have been. Watching the film, you think she'd never experienced any joy in her life at all, except at the hands of men. Part of my dissertation is fictionalized responses from these women to their portrayals since they died, and so much of my research was in making sure I got their voice right. Making sure I didn't talk over them while trying to talk for them, trying so desperately not to become the thing I was criticizing. Giving these women their voices back, rather than just another person using their image to further an agenda. I did all that research because I respect every woman I wrote about, and that is the difference. Andrew Dominik doesn't respect Marilyn. He's not trying to tell her story, or even the story in Blonde. He just wanted an excuse to take a famous sex symbol, turn her into a rape fantasy, and then brag that it was high art. Which brings me right back to... because you can say what you want about The Idol, and I will, but you can't say that the cinematography isn't good. It's a beautiful show. The lighting, the shot composition, the style, it's all great. But it was always going to be because Sam Levinson was behind it. That's part of why Euphoria is so critically lauded, at least in the first season, because he has a style and he sticks to it. He knew what look he wanted the show to have, and he executed that vision pretty much perfectly. But unfortunately, Jocelyn falls within that vision. She's a prop. Part of the beautiful cinematic shots, chain smoking as things happen around her, and the very few times she uses her own agency in the episode are to actively make herself easier to exploit. Like when she complains that her nudity writer, which is there for her own safety, is inconvenient because she wants to get her tits out right now. Or when she turns the reporter's recording back on so their off-the-record talk can actually be on the record. Or when she invites over the guy who she knows is bad news. She's pretty. But there's almost no personality there, which isn't helped by Lily Rose Depp's lackluster performance. But maybe that performance is because she wasn't given enough character to work with. I'm being very generous to her here because I genuinely think that most of the problems with this show is in the writing, and I'm not sure a better actor could have made it work either. I don't believe Jocelyn is a real person. I don't believe Tedros is either. The difference is, I don't believe Tedros because I don't believe The Weeknd. I don't believe Jocelyn because I also don't believe The Weeknd or Sam Levinson. I don't believe them when they run around doing damage control and promising that, no, this show is super cool and good and interesting actually, and all the critics are wrong and we'll all be so sorry when it's finished airing because they were in the right the whole time. I don't believe in these characters except as a vehicle for exploitation set against the backdrop of flawless bodies and gorgeous lighting. This show is beautiful, and that's part of the problem, because Blonde is beautiful. And it pretends to be about exploitation of a woman whilst using it as an excuse to exploit her. It shows you the inside of her vagina and then pretends it was a deep artistic choice and not a horrible example of the sexist reductive way that she was viewed, to the point where even the filmmaker supposedly trying to show how badly treated she was thinks that is an okay thing to do. The Idol is beautiful, and no one is horny, but Sam and Abel sure are trying to make us think that they are, that this is all very sexy actually, and that this is a story worth telling, by them specifically, and not yet another case of men taking advantage of women whilst claiming to be speaking for them. Don't watch this show. Don't hate watch it. Don't try the first episode because it can't possibly be that bad. It is. It is that bad. Don't bother. Go watch any number of better films and TV shows made by women about the exploitation of women, even tangentially. Because even tangentially, they will have done a better job. Watch Promising Young Woman, trigger warning for that one. Watch Dirty Dancing, written by a woman with an abortion plotline in an age where those were extremely frowned upon. Watch Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which touches on a number of issues. Watch Plan B, Fleabag, Insecure, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, Little Women, I May Destroy You, Nomadland, and hell, go watch Portrait of a Lady on Fire to cleanse the palate. Women kissing with consent can't get more diametrically opposed to the Idol if you tried. Trigger warning for some of those, by the way. They're all very good, but Google them first. I don't have a fun outro for this video today. I'm just frustrated. I'm really tired of watching things made by men, normalising the exploitation of women, and then being told it was a different time, or much, much worse, it's supposed to be exploitative. It's about exploitation. In the eternal words of David Rose,
E-class.
I'm off to go stand under a cold shower because England is in the middle of a heat wave and having my fan off for long enough to film this video made me too hot to function. Annyeong! I hate this show. Like, much as I want this video to get seen by people, please don't make me have to watch more of this show. I'm begging you. Please, look at me. If you really want a follow-up video when it's finished, I will do that. But I would rather not. I'm begging. I know you'd like to see me suffer, but, like, please.